Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining my tech talk, whether it be morning or evening or wherever you are in the world. It's really good to see you here. Yeah, my talk is on job hunting in a pandemic. So this year has been intense. I'm sure there's a lot of different experiences, but many of us have experienced partial or full quarantine, remote work, a lot of fear and uncertainty as this virus kind of traveled around the world and really affected everyone's life. And I wanted to share a bit about what my story is. Because it's a lightning talk, we're going to fast forward to the summer. And I found myself, I'm a US citizen, and I found myself living in Tokyo, Japan. I've been here a few years, and I really like it. I'm a senior engineer. I have 8 years industry experience and a master's degree. So I've been doing it a while and I'm confident in my skills. I found myself in a position where, although I really liked the people I worked with, things weren't working out and I needed to change my job. And I was finding it especially hard to interview while doing that job. I just found it kind of impossible. So I did a kind of a crazy thing is I quit my job despite not having the next thing lined up. Now, this part of the talk is not advice. That was a big risk that I took. I want to kind of qualify that is that all advice is somewhat limited, like there's no universal advice. And so I want to note that I have a lot of privilege. I had the savings to do a move like this. I don't have any children or dependents, although I do have a cat. So there's a lot of things that were working in my favor. It still was scary because I could have gotten deported. I don't have a legal right to stay in Japan. And given the pandemic, Japan is not very friendly about letting people back in who are not Japanese citizens. So that's a bit about the situation. So now that I've introduced kind of where I was, I want to talk about the structure of this short talk. I'm going to go into what a typical interview process looks like. Then I'm going to talk about some things from rejection to boundaries to surviving. I'm going to go into how you can leverage your Women Who Code network and the kind of conclusion of this tale. So let's get into it. Most interview processes are multi-stage, and they might start off with a screening. I should back up here. Like if I had to average my interview experiences, I would kind of break them into stages like this. However, every company is a little different. Some of these stages will blend together or be omitted, but most of them, after you submit your application, you'll see something like this. First off is the company wants to narrow the number of applicants they have. They might do this through an online coding test. They might just do it through reading resumes. And then they've narrowed down who they're actually going to put time into talking to. There might be an introduction phase where you just do a more casual conversation to clarify expectations. And maybe they'll share a little bit about how the tech eval works and give recommendations on what to study. The tech evaluations, I'm sure a lot of us have seen, they're often technical interviews. They could also take the form of a take-home project that can be open book, open note, where you can build something. It's rare, but I especially like companies that do a short-term paid contract where you get a real feel for what it's like working on their team. Towards the end, you'll start meeting the team that you'll work with. And then there's an offer phase, which it's not all said and done. Once they want to hire you, you'll have to negotiate the terms of that offer. Some changes that made the situation different this year from two perspectives. Companies have seen a lot of economic woes. There's been mass layoffs. There's been hiring freezes. And a lot of this is due to less venture capital funding or, less demand from customers. For me, I felt like, well, I used to interview very well. I was good at math. I had a sort of gift for algorithms. It just made sense. And this year, it felt like the magic was gone. It was just hard to interview under stress. And I just got stuck. So that was quite a change. And I want to share some data about what my job search looked like. I actually applied to 27 companies, from small startups to international giants. This is actually a pretty high number. Again, this part of the talk is not necessarily advice. It's just trying to be transparent about what my process looked like. And the outcomes for those, I got rejected a lot, 12 times. 4 companies were not actually hiring. Maybe it was an outdated job post. I withdrew for some reasons. I'll talk more about that later. Sometimes I ran out of time because I ended up taking an offer, again, because of this timeline I had for, staying in Japan and getting a new visa. I needed to kind of move fast. I got 2 offers, and one was trending towards an offer, but it was still in the salary negotiation phase. So if I could give a piece of advice, it would be get used to rejection. You're going to face a lot of it. And it's not even about you. And just because I'm a senior engineer doesn't mean that I was just doing great at all these interviews and rocking it and, getting to the end. I got rejected all throughout the process. Sometimes I got rejected in the screening phase. Maybe I just wasn't what they were looking for. Sometimes kind of in an intro phase. The tech evaluations can vary wildly, and sometimes you do well, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get rejected when you start meeting the wider team. Sometimes you can get rejected even if they say, we want to make you an offer. I had one that actually turned into they offered to someone else. Again, an offer is not real until it's on paper. So it's a good thing to remember. And it's good to remember too, sometimes when you get rejected, you can think, ooh, I'm not a good engineer, or there must be something wrong with me. You can really depersonalize it, because there's often a lot of times the reason can be completely different. Companies might find someone cheaper to do the same work. Maybe they find someone with a little bit more skill in an area they really need. Maybe their situation changed and they're no longer hiring. Maybe they have some past bias or some weird experience and they just got a funny feeling, or they're afraid to change. There's a lot of luck that comes into interviews. The interview processes are only run by humans, so of course they're going to be flawed, and maybe someone just got there first. So yeah, there's just so many reasons why it might not even be about you. My image isn't loading here. This is disappointing. Okay, I had a screenshot of this book cover. The book is called Rejection Proof, and it's by a man named Jia Zheng. And I love this quote. It says, "Rejection is an opinion of the rejecter. It is heavily influenced by historical context, cultural differences, and psychological factors. There is no universal rejection or acceptance." I read this audiobook this summer, and it was so helpful. I think just listening to this guy who just really put himself in the face of rejection made me feel more resilient to it. So I'm very grateful for that book. The second piece of advice is to set good boundaries. That sometimes we need to say no to things. So notice that I had a lot of different outcomes, and that even though I really, really needed a job, I still withdrew from 5 places. And that seems a bit contradictory. Well, if you really needed a job so bad, why would you say no? Well, it's because it was not going to work out in the long run. Like, yeah, maybe I could have gotten a job at one of these companies, but if it didn't work out, what if I need a job again in 3 to 6 months? Because it's clearly not working out. So it's better to sometimes say no early. So here's some of the things I said no to. Sometimes it's just a different leadership style, and it's a leadership style that hadn't worked for me in the past. So I know myself and I say, well, thanks, and I wish you well, but I think I would be a more successful engineer somewhere else. Once in a while, people aren't very nice in interviews, and I don't want to work for people that are not respectful to me. There's sometimes interview processes I disagree with. I disagreed with a 3-hour resume deep dive that asked me to phrase my work history in the words of my former, mostly male bosses. I think there's lots of wonderful opportunities for reflection and talking about your career from successes to failures, but it's something I'm going to do in my own words. And you know, you don't necessarily owe people a reason when saying no. You can just say, hey, this isn't the right fit for me. You know, be polite, but you don't have to prove yourself or justify. You can just say, no, thank you for your time. I've decided to move on. I also said no to lowering my salary. I know times are tough and sometimes companies offer the best that they can, but I also didn't want to lower my worth. And I've navigated backwards. Sorry about this. Here we go. So because I said no, and hell, my cat is here saying yes. Because I said no, I could spend more time studying for the jobs that excited me. And I was also more mindful of other people's time. You know, companies put a lot of time into interviewing. So if you're really not serious about the job, the right thing to do is just say, thanks, but I'm gonna move on. And then they can, you know, focus their efforts in other places too. Here's a breakdown of where my time went in interviewing. These are the hours I counted. I counted like 200 hours and probably spent double that working because it just felt like a full-time job. I spent 70 hours on take-home projects. So that's actually a lot of time. And that was over 5 different take-home projects. And only one of those actually turned into a job offer. I guess one of them was still in the interview stage. So perhaps maybe 2 of them were worth it. So I have this interesting thoughts about, should I do project-based interviews? And a lot of them, I think the best ones are, you can use whatever tool you want. Use your favorite language and build us a tool to do X. And those can be really fun and give you a chance to hone a skill, but it's good to keep in mind that you might just be doing the project for the project's sake. So I think one of the things I asked myself after, do I have to learn a new tool? No. Can I use this to study for other interviews? Or is this something like, can I pull out the non-test parts and make some open source thing I can add to my GitHub profile? That's actually what I did, is I took out this like Golang SQL Vue.js stack and I made this open source thing. And that was really fun and rewarding, and I got something out of it, even if the company said no. If you have to learn a new tool, are you excited about it? Do you want to spend 10 to 15 hours learning that tool? Are you going to be competitive against people who already know the tool? Maybe you will be, but I would say like put a time boundary on it and don't, you know, it's okay to submit partial work and be like, this is where I got. And the last piece of advice is just find a way to survive. It's just a year that requires a lot of resilience. I like this quote by the Roman Ovid, be patient and tough. Someday this pain will be useful to you. Still wrote this on the window at the beginning of the pandemic, and I look at it every day. Again, sorry about these pictures. I spent a lot of time, if you're familiar with rubber duck programming, I spent a fair amount of time talking with a rubber duck about my interview because I bought a cute little rubber duck to put in my bathtub. But it was a hard year. And so some things for self-care are practicing mindfulness, from meditation to running, walking, or journaling, making sure to get enough sleep, at least 8 hours a night. It's just going to really enhance your performance. A little trick I like to do too to detach from outcomes is to send myself a postcard. I'll write a postcard and put it in the mail the day before a really tough interview. And then, you know, after that Amazon interview, I can get that postcard that said, hey, you worked hard, you did your best, and, you know, keep going. I highly recommend this course. It's free on Coursera to audit. It's called The Science of Wellbeing, and it has a lot of science-backed strategies for improving your mental health and happiness. They range from meditation to exercise to random acts of kindness. The last bit is you can leverage the Women Who Code network to help you prepare for interviews. At the beginning of my search, I actually created the channel Interview Prep because I noticed there was no channel for it. And now it's got, I think, over 180 people in it. And it's a great place to ask questions like, where should I study? What kind of interviews have you seen? Do you want to study together? I started organizing group study sessions in the Tokyo chapter, and it became a great place for support. We do it fully remote, so we can all just call into a meeting and bring whatever we want to study and hold each other accountable. And I wanted to give a big shout out to some of the awesome women across the global Women Who Code network who sent me messages of support. Timura James in Los Angeles, Arcana in Singapore, and my friends in the Tokyo network who have been really supportive during this time. Pardon the cat. There's a happy end to the story, is that I ended up at a great company called Mercari Japan, and it's kind of back end, but I actually get to do some full stack stuff. They've been really proactive in diversity and inclusion, and this is a big deal because Japan has a lot of room for growth. And I got a 5-year visa, so I'm still in Tokyo with my cat. So thank you so much for attending my talk today, and please keep in touch. I'm on Twitter at StoneColdKilzer if you'd like to reach out or ask any questions. I'll open the floor for questions for about 10 minutes, and then I need to get back to work. But yeah, thank you so much for joining today. Brent Cook, is that you from Texas? Is that Brent from Boundary? I'm just wondering if these are people I actually know, so. Event. Let me see if I'm trying to find if there's like a question section. How much did you rely on networking as opposed to job postings? Oh, great question from Kirsten Regier. Yeah, I think networking actually helped a lot. I got a lot of leads from talking to people on Twitter. Job postings, sometimes helpful. It depends on the site here. In Japan, I find LinkedIn pretty good. I can't read Japanese very well yet, and I certainly don't qualify for a job that would require a like measured language proficiency. I'm pretty beginner, but yeah, so the job boards so much, but a lot of recruiters via LinkedIn, and then some referrals from connecting with people on Twitter. There's a lot of wonderful people that really want to signal boost and help you out, so that can be really great. Oh, the Slack channel, yeah, it's called interview prep. And it's in the like Women Who Code, the main one, not one of the track codes. But you can always create your own Slack channels too. That's always optional. Let's see if there's any more questions. Oh, thank you. Thanks for the congrats. Yeah, it worked out in the end, but it was rough in the middle. How can you be invited? Let's see. If you go to the, yeah, if you're not in the global Slack, I think, let's see. Oh, something just changed on the screen. We can paste in the event channel. There's like an invite to the Slack, or I think if you go to the Women Who Code homepage, like womenwhocode.com, and join, I think you'll get invited to the Slack network. The course name, yeah, is the Science of Well-Being. Let me go back to that slide. And yeah, it's free on Coursera. It's actually one of the most popular courses, and there's a really good podcast. This stuff is all free, and she's made so many people's life better, and there's a lot of science behind it too. So it's just really, I'm really glad I did it. I started it maybe in February, and I'm so glad because it was just perfect timing. I really needed it. What is the best way to prepare for interviews? Yeah, it was a lightning talk, so it varies, and it's going to vary by your level. I think at a more junior level, the algorithm study is really important. At a senior level, there's some challenges where they start to ask more about leadership experience. And so it's really good to reflect on your past successes and failures And I really admire the style that Amazon.com does for their leadership interviews. If you Google search like the 14 leadership traits for Amazon, even if you're not interviewing at Amazon, if you're more senior and you're starting to have a career to look back on, look at all those points and start journaling a little bit about each one. You know, what is the time you showed the value that you disagreed with something, but you still committed to the mission? What is the time that you tried to raise the standard of quality and you stood up for something? And maybe you don't necessarily agree with all their things, but just having an opinion on it and being able to talk about your successes and failures as an engineer, how you collaborate with other people. Engineering is so much more than writing code. A lot of our day we just spend working and collaborating with people and resolving conflict. So those things become more and more important. Top tip for new developers starting their very first interview, practice a lot of your data structures, I guess. It's been a while since those days, but you know, there's sites like LeetCode, HackerRank that can help you really get the data structures down. And then when you do the interviewers often like you to be able to talk through your solution. So I've been an interviewer when I was at previous companies, and they will sometimes ask you to, like, you know, explain a problem or trace the code. Actually trace the code and think about what's doing. Maybe draw a picture of what the memory looks like. So many times I'll have an interview candidate that just says, it just works. It works the way it's supposed to. And it's like, okay, but there's a bug here. So, but honestly, after being on the candidate side in such a vulnerable position, I sometimes wonder if algorithmic interviews, are these even the right way to test people, because they look so different than the job. But there might be something we have to live with even if I don't agree with them. How do you know?
Anne, sorry,
yeah.
I'm sorry to join and cut you off. I just wanted to let everyone know that there are more sessions that started about 8 minutes ago if you wanted to check those out. I'm so sorry to cut off your lightning talk. I know that you're getting some great questions. Did you already share how people can follow up with you?
Yeah, I did. And no worries. I was only going to do 10 minutes of questions anyway. So,
okay.
Yeah, please reach out to me on Twitter if you have more questions. I'd be happy to answer. Thank you so much. And let's go watch the other talks.
Yes, thank you so much, Anne. Take care. Bye, everyone. Thank you.